Gentleman, Mr. Courtney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to begin by recognizing both your efforts and Ranking Member Smith's efforts to hold recurring updates and briefings by this committee. And in my opinion, it has been that healthy process which has provided the foundation for the bipartisan votes that have passed supplemental funding really over the last year. And again, the witnesses have been part of that process, so thank you for your contribution. Just to, foot stomp what I think my friend Mr. Wilson just indicated is that included in those supplemental funding bills were actually specific explicit language by Congress directed towards the offices of Inspector General to be engaged at the maximum level. And again, Mr. Storch, if you could just sort of confirm that for the record, that, again, you've been around for a long time, thank goodness, but again, it also has been with congressional support that your efforts are taking place.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the question. We very much appreciate that support, and we're committed to the greatest possible transparency in our oversight efforts.
So, and again, when we talk about a blank check, I mean, I think clearly we in the Congress had our eyes wide open when these large amounts of funding were authorized and appropriated, that we wanted oversight at every step of the way. In dealing with, again, Ukraine's efforts to deal with waste, fraud, and abuse, Dr. Call, there's an international organization which kind of keeps score on countries' efforts in terms of dealing with corruption and fraud, and it's Transparency International. In the last year, at the same time that this unprecedented almost infusion of money has been flowing in, not just from the US, but also from the EU, Ukraine's position on Transparency International's ranking actually improved. It was one of the few countries in the world. It went up 6 places. And I wonder if you could just sort of, with that backdrop, talk about your perspective as far as the seriousness with which the Ukrainian government has approached this whole question of making sure that this help goes to the right place.
Thank you. I've worked the Ukraine issue now for about 9 years, and in our engagements over that entire period, corruption was the #1 issue we raised with Ukrainian officials. And I think there have been improvements over time, especially in the defense sector, which is obviously most germane for DOD. I will just tell you, in our engagements with senior Ukrainian officials now, I was in Kyiv in January, the secretary talks to his counterpart about every other week. The importance of accountability, of transparency, and of combating corruption are always points of emphasis for us. But it's not just what our talking points say. We have to put, our effort into it. We've provided the Ukrainians with ways to track the systems we provide, to include scanners and software. We've done, when it's safe, remote visits to sites. We don't see any evidence of diversion in our reporting. We think the Ukrainians are using properly what they've been given. But we'll continue to foot stomp the importance of accountability and transparency for all the reasons you mentioned.
And looking again at President Zelensky's own efforts, I would say he courageously took steps to remove officials, some very close even to his office, and political supporters of his own, which shows, I think, tremendous commitment to not just talking about trying to address this problem, but actually taking action to remove people, which again, I think just sort of demonstrates, true commitment. I think, that should be also acknowledged in terms of the seriousness with which, he and his administration is pursuing this goal. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, as long as we're entering newspaper articles, I'd like to ask that the piece in this morning's Washington Post, Zelensky takes on Ukraine's top internal enemy, be admitted to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
And again, that walks through the whole question of how they've improved their score with Transparency International in the midst of dealing with an existential threat to their country. And with that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman from Connecticut. Chair now recognizes